All right. Well, hey, Hussein, thanks for doing this today. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes. And I tell you, you and I have had a lot of conversations about financing and the way that you utilize it. You view it strategically. You think about it tactically as a tool. So if you could first just introduce yourself, kind of say where you are, how long you've been in business, and then we'll have a little conversation here about how you go about utilizing financing.
Yeah. So I'm Hussien Abdelaziz, from Staten Island, New York. Been in business for a little over 2 years now, and yeah, I use a ton of financing when I can. Um, so
So
that's
you've always been one in our conversations, you view financing, very strategically. It is something that you have in your arsenal, but when do you bring financing into the equation? Is it at the startup call? Do you do it at the end when you're turning price? Like, what have you found to be the best time, or is it kind of depend on the customer?
It always depends on the customer. To be honest, like I can't sit here and tell you I'm gonna use it at the end. I'll say it at the beginning. If it's not mentioned, because I don't like talking about money from the beginning, it'll be mentioned at the end, right? So it'll be mentioned, and we'll talk about our financing options. But I kind of like bringing it in somehow if there's a conversation about money, because it'll help the customer and it'll help us, right? So it'll help me go from one room, two rooms to three, four rooms, or it'll bring in a staircase that they've always wanted to get done. So yeah, so it always depends on the customer, but it's almost all the time. Um, yeah, I would say 90% of the time, unless a customer says, "Hey, this is how I'm paying," and that obviously in New York City, people are a little rough around the edges, but yeah, other than that, it's usually all the time.
Well, we talk a lot about price conditioning, right? As we move through the process and the inspired sale and looking for opportunities to price condition, it sort of rings the bell in the same way where financing conditioning can also be effective, right? If you start to hear cues or you hear them mention something like, hey, right now I really want to focus on this scope of job, but boy, maybe down the future I'd like to expand to this, and all of a sudden there's a cue, right? And all of it you can introduce it and perhaps increase the opportunity for job size, or just create an opportunity for the customer that maybe they didn't think were possible.
Right, and it's a trigger, right? So it triggers you from the beginning, and at that point, it goes from trying to give a discount, and now you're not even thinking about discounting, right? Now you're like, well, the customer doesn't really care much about price because now they know they can finance it. So a lot of times, owners, doesn't matter what it is, right? Whether it's this business or another business, they're ready to discount only because their fear of the customer saying no. But once you start mentioning financing and you give them the option of 12 months, 24 months, 18 months, whatever program you offer, they're just willing to do whatever only because they know that they have the option of paying whatever that minimal payment is per month. So it takes a lot of ease off of them, monthly. And even at that point in time where they don't have to go ahead and spend or write a check for 5 grand anymore. They're not writing anything till the first month, when that payment's due.
So often financing has a perception of being negative, right? Like, oh, well, I'll offer financing to someone who I perceive, or maybe they perceive that they can't afford something. It has a little bit of a slanted perception when, truth be told, especially with some of the options that are out there now with 12 months, no interest, same as cash, the sophisticated consumer are the ones that are the first ones to take advantage of financing, right? It's a vastly different reality than sometimes the perception of financing is permeated to the market.
Yeah, so Grant, like it's very upsetting when I hear owners say they don't want to offer financing, right? Because there's a lot of pros to financing for a customer as well, not just for the owner, but for the customer, that customer that has a child going to college, or they're looking, especially the holidays, right? Holidays are coming up. They're looking to buy gifts, right? So they have, certain amount of budget to spend on gifts, and now you expand that budget for them because now you're financing that floor or the entire home, whatever it is, and that's something where a customer is going to appreciate you the most. And as an owner, right? And I'll tell you the truth, like some owners don't want to get hit with the fees, right? There's fees that are out there, and let's be honest, But we have some new, new programs that we have out there that don't really charge us any fees. But the ones who are still using the fees, um, yeah, but it takes that no to a yes. So even if they're taking whatever percentage out, you just landed a job, right? You landed a job that customer said no to, but you said, hey, wait a minute, I can offer you 12 months no interest, 6 months no interest, 24, whatever that program is.
Right.
If you offer that customer any sort of financing, like you just won. You just won the customer over. It doesn't matter how small or how big the job is, right? Because now they have you in the back of their mind. They get that bill every month, right? They're gonna remember you. Oh well, they offer now. It's like, well, I'll tell my sister about it, my mother, my father, my cousin, my friends. So that's why I love to offer it, because now they see you every month. We're talking about marketing. You just marketed yourself for 12 months.
And that's a really strategic way to look at it, right? There's a trailing residual impact and impression on that customer that continues forward because the fact that that financing is rooted in your experience. So even though
Right.
you may have to pay a dealer fee to land a job that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have landed, there's a win there. But then the residual sort of impression and any referrals that you might get from that customer now, maybe it results in one or two additional jobs. Well, now all of a sudden that dealer fee in theory could be spread across three jobs, all of which
Whatever
you
it
wouldn't
is.
have gotten had you not used financing at the beginning, right? I
Correct.
mean, yeah, that's the perception. So that's just such a great point. I'm so glad you brought that up. So what advice would you have, Hussein, to a young franchise owner that, is really out and, knows about financing things, right? They're trying to get comfortable with appointments. They're trying to be, proficient with product selection. They're, trying to get effective with the tablet. And then financing comes into the equation. It's just another thing that they have to figure out how to implement. What would be your advice to them in terms of, the approach towards it, when to integrate it, and just overall not to maybe not to be afraid of it and use it as the tool that it's meant to be?
There's no reason to be afraid of it, number one, right? So I'll
Mm.
tell any owner there's no need to be afraid of it. Number two, listen, right? Listening is key. So from the time you walk in to the time you present your tablet and say, hey, this is a, you're gonna you're gonna hear there's gonna be opportunities in between where customers go, well, I don't know if I can afford this, right? Or you'll hear those trigger words and you can stop in the middle. Well, don't worry about it. I'll talk to you about our financing options later. Oh, you finance? Yes, we do. Right? You'll hear other companies out there that are offering financing on TV all day long, right? And this is why they get the phone calls because they're financing. People don't worry about the pricing. They're worried about finance. How can they afford it? So you can be $500,000 more, but as long as you finance it. So yeah, number one, don't be don't fear it. Number two, always listen. Just listen to the customer. Listening is key from the beginning to the end. And then third, if you don't hear any trigger words in between, offer it. Flip your tablet over. We have 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, 48 months, whatever you're offering to them, and just make sure you point at it because at the end of the day, it can turn something over from $2,000 to 6,000. Just happened, the other day. I got a kitchen out of it by offering financing, so it helps.
So what happened on that project? Just as a quick case study, I'd be curious.
Oh, so yeah, it was an attic and a set of stairs, carpet stairs, attic. Um, I offered a financing well, I always ask, do you have any other projects? She was like, oh, well, yeah, we're thinking about a couple of things, but we want to stick to what we're doing now. Well, I said, we do financing, and we're talking about vinyl in the attic. Then all of a sudden, she's like, well, since you finance, can you measure my kitchen too? I'm like, yeah, why not? So I measured the kitchen. It was a small 10 by 15 kitchen, and I sold it for 2,500 bucks for a nice LVP. But that's $2,500 I didn't have.
So you
So
expanded the
that
scope
that's
of
what I
that
mean.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, so to all the new franchisees, you're gonna speak to older franchisees or some negative franchisees about financing, and a lot of them don't like it. I'm telling you, all these successful businesses that have multi stores are all financing, right? Not just in flooring. You're talking about Bob's, you're talking about Best Buy, you're talking about any automotive dealer. So they're financing for a reason, and they have multiple stores for a reason.
Well, This is excellent, Hussein, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think
You
a
got
lot
it.
of people are going to get some insight, and I'm thrilled to hear that it's working so well for you. It's helping drive growth in your business, and you capsule it very well, you quantify it very well, and so I appreciate you taking a few minutes and doing this for us today. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Anytime.
Yeah.